After an exhausting day of work, the weight on my shoulders felt heavier than ever. The clock on the kitchen wall said almost 7 o'clock at night, and I couldn't wait to get home and hug my children. That day, the hours dragged by and, no matter how much I tried to focus on the tasks, my mind kept returning to them. What would they be doing? Were they having fun or bored, eagerly awaiting my return? When I finally arrived home, I was greeted by silence. A silence that, instead of calming my heart, made my stomach turn. Normally, the house was chaos at the end of the day, toys scattered, laughter echoing, and, sometimes, even some fights. But now, everything was in an uneasy calm. "Boys," I called, as I left my bag on the floor and squeezed between the door and the wall. The silence continued. I went to the living room, and there they were, each in their own corner, with their attention focused on the television screen. "Hi, Mommy," shouted Lucas, the oldest, without taking his eyes off the program. Sarah, the youngest, just nodded, absorbed in some cartoon. "You won't believe how school was today." Lucas, finally looking away from the TV, got up and ran over to me. The teacher brought an experiment with a volcano, and I was the one who made the lava. "That's amazing, love," I replied with a forced smile, trying to hide my growing concern. "But what happened here? Why is everything so quiet?" He looked at Sarah, who was still sitting on the sofa, and then shook his head. "Rebecca came, Mom. She said she was going to help us make art." Rebecca, my neighbor, the woman who was always helpful, offering help whenever I needed it. But at that moment, something didn't feel right. A strange feeling was growing inside me. "And she left you alone while she did that?" I asked, trying to remain calm. Lucas hesitated, looking at the floor. "She just went to get some things from her house. She said she would bring more paint." "But what about the mess?" I couldn't keep the worry out of my voice. "Where is the paint she brought? And what did you do during the time you were alone?" "We just draw, Mom. And everything turned out really cool." Lucas insisted, trying to reassure me. "Cool. I will see it." With a lump in my throat, I headed to the kitchen, where the sight that presented itself would make any mother panic. The floor was covered in shredded paper, and paint was scattered everywhere. The smell of fresh paint filled the air, mixed with the sound of a radio playing upbeat music. "What was this?" I muttered to myself, frustration growing. "Rebecca, are you around?" It was then that the kitchen door opened, and Rebecca appeared with a wide smile, as if she had just won the lottery. "Isara, I hope you didn't mind." The kids were so excited about the art that I couldn't resist letting them explore a little more. "Yeah, I see," I replied, crossing my arms. "But you shouldn't have warned me that you were going to leave them alone like that. This is not safe." "Ah, but they were having fun. And I just went to get some things, I swear." Her tone was too sweet, almost like she was trying to convince me of something I didn't want to believe. As she spoke, the look in Lucas and Sarah's eyes made me realize that something was changing. The way they looked at Rebecca, with a sparkle in their eyes that I didn't see when they looked at me, made me uneasy. "It's okay, isn't it, kids?" Rebecca asked, stroking Sarah's hair. "Did you guys like our art class?" "Yes," they responded in unison, and my heart sank a little deeper. Deep down, I knew I needed to be careful. Something wasn't right, and Rebecca's help, which had felt like a blessing, now sounded more like a warning. The air was thick as I entered the kitchen, surrounded by the chaos unfolding before me. The chairs were overturned, the toys were scattered across the floor, and in the background, my children's loud laughter mixed with the music echoing from the radio. The heart raced. Where was Rebecca? The woman who had offered to help and who I, in a moment of desperation, had decided to trust. "Imam." Lucas, my oldest son, appeared at the kitchen door with a dirty face and a beaming smile. Beside her, Clara, my little one, held a brush and seemed to be on an artistic mission that I had not authorized. "Hi, my loves. What happened here?" I asked, trying to hide the frustration in my voice. But the scene was undeniable. The kitchen looked like a battlefield after a paint fight. Rebecca was teaching us how to make art. Clara exclaimed, twirling the brush as if it were a magic wand. I looked at Lucas, who just shrugged, as uneasiness grew inside me. "Rebecca," I called, my voice resounding through the house. Silence took over for a moment, until she appeared at the door, with a radiant smile and the air of a satisfied teacher. Isara, isn't it amazing what we found to do? She gestured, as if this mess were the height of creativity. Yes, but... I hesitated, looking around. You didn't say you were coming, and that's a bit much for an average day, don't you think? Rebecca frowned, but quickly her smile returned. I just wanted to help. The kids were so bored, and I thought a creativity class would be fun. Look how happy they are. She pointed to the children, who were clearly delighted with the new activity. But I am the mother. I should be the one guiding them in these activities, not you. Insecurity took over me, and the feeling of losing control increased. Sarah, you shouldn't worry so much. Sometimes a little freedom is what kids need. Look how much fun they are having. Rebecca's defense was firm, but beneath that facade of kindness, something bothered me. It's true, Mom. Rebecca is cool. Lucas intervened, and I felt my heart sink. This was exactly what I feared, the ease with which she captured their attention, while I struggled to balance work and motherhood. I just don't want you guys to get used to depending on her for everything. I want to be present in your lives. The voice came out harsher than I intended, and I saw Clara's expression change. But she's our friend, Mom, Clara said with a tone of dismay that cut me off. Friend? She's just a neighbor, I replied, but I couldn't hide the insecurity in my words. Rebecca, sensing the tension, intervened. Look, Sarah, I understand your point of view, but sometimes a little help doesn't hurt. You have so much on your plate, and I just wanted to be a support for you. A support? Or a replacement? I couldn't control the question that came out, and the atmosphere became thick. Sarah, don't be so harsh. I'm here to help, not take your place. The frustration in Rebecca's voice was palpable, but the doubt in my heart grew. I just need some time to process all of this. I responded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and distrust. Deep down, I wanted to believe his intentions were pure, but a shadow of doubt lingered. Clear. I understand. Let's let the kids have fun, and then we can talk more. She smiled, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more behind her words. As night fell and the children calmed down, I felt more confused than ever. The thought of giving up control over my children's lives was terrifying, but the truth was, I was exhausted. What should I do? What I wanted. Good night, kids, I murmured as I tucked them into bed. The dreamy looks and innocent smiles reminded me why I fought so hard. I needed to protect what was mine, but how? Rebecca's friendship felt like a double-edged sword, and I didn't know who to trust. I woke up that morning with a strange sensation, as if the air was thicker. The routine was already established, but something about Rebecca's presence made me uneasy. She had become a constant in my life, helping with the kids while I worked, but with each passing day, the line between helping and intrusion seemed to blur. At lunchtime, while the boys were playing in the yard, I decided to take a look at my cell phone. The messages were there, one by one, as if they were watching me. You know what Rebecca is doing, don't you? The sender was unknown, but the content was clear. My heart raced. What did this mean? Was Rebecca doing something wrong? Mommy, look what Aunt Rebecca taught me to do. I heard the voice of Lucas, my eldest son, echoing outside. He was holding a piece of paper with a colorful painting on it, but there was something about his expression that made me uneasy. The sparkle in his eyes wasn't the same as I used to see. How beautiful, son. Did you do this to Aunt Rebecca? I asked, trying to hide my uneasiness. Yes. She is very cool. He replied, smiling. My stomach turned. With a lump in my throat, I went to the backyard and saw Rebecca, sitting in a chair, watching the children. The way she looked at them, as if they were her own, put me on alert. Isara. She waved, her smile wide and confident. Rebecca. What's going on here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm just helping kids express their creativity. They're having fun, aren't they? She replied, her eyes shining with satisfaction. Yes, but I didn't know you were going to be here all day. The word, but, slipped from my lips as if I were trying to justify my insecurity. Ah, I thought you were busy, so I decided to surprise you. They love spending time with me, don't you think? Rebecca paused, as if calculating her words. Yeah, they love it. But I need to know what you're doing. I'm their mother, you know. Of course, I understand. I don't want to replace you, Sarah. I just want to help. The way she said it made me feel a pang of distrust. I returned home, my head full of questions. I looked at the messages again, and the uneasiness grew. Why would someone send me this? Who would be able to come up with something like that? I tried to push these thoughts away, but the feeling that something was wrong persisted. That night, before going to sleep, I couldn't take my mind off the photos that might be hidden somewhere. What else could Rebecca be doing? And why hadn't I noticed before? While the kids slept, I took out my cell phone and looked for more messages, but I couldn't find anything. The silence in the house seemed to echo in my ears. Then an idea occurred to me. What if I looked at social media? What did the other moms in the neighborhood have to say? I started researching, and soon came across a group of mothers. The messages were harmless, but at the same time revealing. Rebecca is a great help, but sometimes it seems like she intrudes too much, one mom wrote. My heart accelerated. That's exactly what I felt. I decided it was time to confront Rebecca. I couldn't continue living under this cloud of uncertainty. Tomorrow I'll talk to her, I thought, determined. When the kids woke up, I would make sure everything was in order. But before I could relax, my gaze fixed on the window. The night was dark and silent, but I felt someone watching me. I looked closer, but there was no one. Just the shadows of the night and the feeling that the truth was closer than I imagined. When I arrived at Rebecca's house, a mix of anxiety and hope accompanied me. What did I expect? For her to convince me that my suspicions were unfounded? Or that, in some way, she revealed a side of her that I didn't know? Deep down, I knew I needed to face this head-on. The door was ajar, and as I pushed it open, I was greeted by the sweet smell of baking cakes. Isara, glad you came, Rebecca exclaimed, with a radiant smile that seemed to diffuse my tension a little. I was thinking about you and your little ones. I came to make some treats for them. Thank you, Rebecca. You really don't need to do this, but I appreciate your concern, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in my mind. But as she began to take the cakes out of the oven, I couldn't help but notice how she moved with an almost rehearsed confidence, as if she were at home, and that bothered me. You know, I really enjoy spending time with kids. They are so creative and full of energy. Rebecca continued, as she poured the dough into a mold. I'm just trying to help you lighten that load a little. I watched her, trying to read her expression. There was a certain sweetness in his tone, but also a determination that made me feel uncomfortable. What do you think they think about you? I asked, trying to sound casual. Rebecca smiled, but there was something in her eyes that made me hesitate. They adore me, Sarah. I'm like an aunt to them. And you know, sometimes it's easier for kids to open up to someone on the outside. Yeah, I imagine so. My voice came out weaker than I intended, and deep down, I knew that was the point. What exactly was going on between Rebecca and my children? But what about me? I don't feel like they share as much with me as they used to. You have a demanding job, and it can be exhausting. Sometimes kids need a little levity, you know? She looked back at the dough, but I noticed the way her fingers moved quickly, as if she were hiding something. After a few minutes of pleasant conversations, I said goodbye and returned home. The atmosphere in my house was heavy. The children's silence made me uneasy. Hi, are you there? I called, but got no answer. I went to the room where I always found them, and, upon entering, I realized that something was wrong. My heart raced. My desk drawer was open, and the box where I kept my important documents was out of place. My mind started racing. What could have happened? Boys. I called again, running into the living room. Where are you? We're here, Mommy. Lucas's voice echoed from their room, and I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. When I entered, I saw the two of them sitting on the floor, surrounded by toys, but the expression on their faces was strange. What happened, Mom? Asked my oldest son. Did you see someone enter the house? Something went missing from my room, I watched them closely, looking for any indication that they knew something.
No, ma'am.
We were just messing around. Clara's response was too quick, and a pang of distrust formed in my chest. They were hiding something, and I needed to find out what it was. I despaired as I realized I couldn't ignore the feeling that Rebecca was involved. As I thought about how I could get answers, an idea came to me. I needed proof. What could I do to find out what was really happening? I decided the first step would be to take a closer look at the interactions between her and my children. If something was wrong, I needed to be ready to act. What I didn't expect was that, on impulse, my curiosity would take me to a place I never imagined I would find. That night, while everyone was sleeping, I grabbed a flashlight and went to Rebecca's backyard. The silence of the night seemed to encourage me, and my heart pounded in my chest. When I reached the back door, the flashlight light illuminated a small window. It was an opportunity. I peeked through the cracks and saw Rebecca writing in a notebook, the dim light from the lamp illuminating her concentrated face. It was then that, with an involuntary movement, I let the flashlight slip from my hands, and the noise caused her to turn around quickly. My heart raced, and I pulled away, panting. What had I done? What had she hidden? A sense of urgency came over me, and I knew I needed to find out. Tomorrow I would seek answers, and if necessary, reveal the truth, no matter what the cost. Whatever was happening, it couldn't go on like this. Rebecca was about to become a part of my life, and I was determined to know exactly what her true role was. I sat up in bed, Rebecca's diary open on my lap, the dim light from the lamp illuminating the yellowed pages. My heart raced as my eyes ran over the words that revealed a past I could never imagine. Each line felt like a stab, and I didn't know if I was more scared or sad. Rebecca wasn't just the helpful neighbor, she was a woman marked by trauma, by losses that shaped her into something dark. I just wanted to have a family, it read, but life always took away what I loved most. These words resonated with me like a distant echo, and with each sentence read, the idealized image I had of Rebecca crumbled. Why didn't you tell me that? I muttered to myself, as if she could hear. The diary spoke of betrayals, of friends who turned into enemies, and of a desperate desire for control. I could feel her pain in every word, but also a need for revenge that made me uneasy. What did she intend by getting so close to my children? This question was rattling around in my mind as I tried to put the pieces of the puzzle together. The idea of exposing it to the rest of the neighborhood seemed increasingly necessary to me. Protecting my children came first, and I needed everyone to know who Rebecca really was. Before taking any action, however, I decided to observe. I was about to put myself in a minefield, and I needed hard evidence, not just guesswork. In the following days, I remained alert. Rebecca's every move, her every interaction with my children, was meticulously analyzed. I saw them run up to her with big smiles, and it broke my heart. "Mom, Aunt Rebecca taught me how to draw an incredible drawing," said Tomas, his eyes shining with excitement. "Yeah, honey, really cool," I would reply, forcing a smile that barely reached my eyes. With each compliment, I felt the weight of distrust building up in my chest. One night, as I was trying to put the boys to sleep, I heard giggling coming from the backyard. Curious and a little apprehensive, I went to the window and saw Rebecca playing with them. Butterflies hit me, and I couldn't help but think something was wrong. Why is she always so present? I asked myself. What exactly did she want? What were you planning? The next day, I decided to confront her. "Rebecca, can we talk?" he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She smiled, as if she already knew what was coming. "Of course, honey. What's worrying you?" His voice was sweet, but there was an undertone of defiance that I couldn't ignore. "I've noticed that you've been spending a lot of time with my kids," I began, trying to sound calm. "Sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable about it." His smile faltered for a brief moment, but soon recovered. "Oh, Sarah, I just want the best for them. I'm like an aunt to them, aren't I?" "But I'm their mother, and that should be enough," I retorted, feeling the adrenaline rising. His expression became more serious. "You don't need to worry, I'm just helping." The way she said it made my stomach turn. There was a subtext there, a message I couldn't fully decipher. "Rebecca, I need you to understand that I want this friendship to be healthy for all of us. I don't want you to cross any boundaries, I stated, trying to be assertive. She took a deep breath, seeming to consider my words. I understand, Sarah. I promise I'll be more respectful. But, sometimes mothers need a little help. I didn't know what to think. His response seemed genuine, but there was a resistance that I couldn't ignore. As she walked away, I let out a heavy sigh. What was behind that friendly facade? The diary was still weighing on my mind, and I knew I needed to act. But how? What else could I discover before making the move that could change everything? My mind was racing a mile a minute, and the desire to protect my children became more and more urgent. I can't let her get deeper into our lives, I thought resolutely. She was willing to unmask Rebecca, but in a strategic move, without haste. The game was just beginning, and I needed to be prepared for everything. The day of the meeting had finally arrived. My heart pounded with a mixture of anxiety and determination as I organized the evidence I had gathered against Rebecca. Every photo, every anonymous message I had received, every excerpt from the diary that revealed his true nature, all of this prepared me for a confrontation that I could no longer wait. I looked at my children, who were playing in the living room, not knowing that their lives could change in a matter of minutes. I mentally thanked them for remaining innocent throughout this storm. Are you ready, Mommy? Lucas, my oldest son, seemed to sense the tension in the air. His gaze was questioning, and I smiled at him, trying to convey reassurance. Yes, my love. Everything will be fine. I promise. The truth was, I needed to believe that promise, not just for him, but for myself as well. At 6 o'clock sharp, the neighbors started to arrive. The room was full, and the atmosphere was charged with expectation. I looked at Rebecca, who was among those present, with a smile that now seemed rehearsed. She seemed so at ease, while I felt every second pass like an eternity. But I knew I couldn't back down. I needed to expose the truth. Good evening, everyone, I began, my voice shaking a little but steady. I thank you for being here. Today, I need to share something very important about our neighbor, Rebecca. The murmur among those present increased, and I saw Rebecca's eyes narrow. Over the past few months, I have accepted Rebecca's help, but what seemed like a friendship has turned into something much more complicated and dangerous. I held the diary in my hands, knowing that would be my trump card. Rebecca is not who she says she is. Sarah, this is ridiculous. I'm here to help, she interrupted, trying to maintain her composure. But his voice betrayed the uneasiness he felt. Help? Do you want us to believe you were just helping? I held up some photos I had printed, showing my children in situations that should not have been recorded. These were taken without my consent. You invaded my privacy and manipulated my children. Silence took over the room, and the neighbors' expressions were a mixture of shock and disbelief. That's not true, Sarah. You're taking things out of context. I love your children. Rebecca was losing her cool, and I knew this was the time to continue. You infiltrated our lives to get revenge for something that happened in your past. I read your diary, Rebecca. I read about their betrayals, their losses. You wanted what I have, and that is unacceptable. The accusation hung in the air like a heavy cloud. You don't know what you're talking about. She stood up, her face a deep shade of red. Nobody here understands what I went through. Maybe you're right, but that doesn't justify your actions. You can't use my family as a way to deal with your pain. My voice was steady, and the room began to hum again. Sarah, you should think better about this, one of the neighbors, Carlos, intervened, but I wasn't about to back down. No. What you did was wrong, and I can't let it continue. You need help, Rebecca, and this community will no longer tolerate your manipulations. The tension was palpable, and I saw some neighbors' eyes change, starting to understand the gravity of the situation. Rebecca, realizing she had lost control, began to back away, her smile fading. I didn't want it to come to this, she murmured, now almost in a whisper, as tears began to slide down her face. It's time for you to face your actions, I said, my voice now softer but still resolute. You can't go on like this, and I hope you get the help you need. As neighbors began to disperse, some approached me, offering support. You were very brave, Sarah, an elderly woman commented, holding my hand. We are here for you and your children. You are not alone. As I looked at the friendly faces around me, a wave of relief and gratitude washed over me. Rebecca had been exposed, and although the path ahead was uncertain, I knew I was ready to rebuild my life and protect my children at any cost. I looked at Lucas and Clara, who were now beside me, and smiled. Let's go home. Yes, Mom, they responded in unison, and I knew that together we could face any challenge that lay ahead.